Until next time.
This is Legacy 1891, preserving the past for the future.
This is Paige Hendrickson, ECSU University Archivist. And today I'm going to talk about an introduction to archives and specifically ECSU archives. And begin by explaining and delving into the question of what exactly is archives, and more specifically, what it's not. So archives are usually a collection of documents, artifacts, and the history of an organization or institution. There are so many different types of archives: government, higher education, of course, special archives that are for companies and in the corporate world, business, music. They can specialize in any number of subjects. Specifically, what most researchers use archives for are either backing up research for sources or sometimes genealogy and family history. The research, though, a lot of archives are wonderfully funded, staffed, and you can just walk in and ask for information, and they can set you up in their, what they call their reading room, kind of their research room. And they can make sure that, you get what you need, you're handling the documents properly, and the preservation is maintained. However, on the other side of that are places like ECSU, where the funding hasn't always necessarily been there. The resources, such as staff, aren't necessarily there. And so you're going to have a little more difficulty when it comes to just walking in and being able to do your research on the spot. Most archives, you need to call ahead. You need to be prepared to not necessarily get an answer the same day. Or be able to walk in. A lot of places operate by appointment, which is the way we like to operate here, considering it's just me. I'm what you call a lone arranger, or a solo archivist. And it depends on, of course, the day. I could be, deep in the middle of processing another collection or going to pick up another collection, at a conference, or, there are lots of different reasons why I may not be there in person. But it's always good to either call ahead or email, something like that. As far as what archives are not, always keep in mind that any collection is only as good as the information and documents kept. And let's face it, not everybody thinks about history. Not everybody wants to really dive into documents and what you're supposed to keep, what you're not supposed to keep. And unfortunately, just like anywhere else, sometimes when employees leave an institution or a job, they often don't think about what value those documents that they worked with all those years could have. And so they unfortunately don't keep them, even though they're probably supposed to. So unfortunately, when history's not kept as far as the documents and there's not a record to go by, let's just face it, there's going to be a gap in the history. One more issue with archives I just want to make people aware of that they may not know. One reason we have such archival debt and incomplete records or inaccessible records in archives, there's a huge backlog to process, not just with the number of donations you receive, but again, it takes time to process. And again, if you don't have that staff, if you don't have the resources to do that and make them accessible, conferences and workshops we're always trying to find ways to process faster, less processing, more product, we call it, to make sure that we can get things more accessible more quickly, so they don't just sit in boxes and collect dust, so they're actually usable. For instance, we recently found out about a collection in a closet of a classroom. It was unsecured, and we've been trying to deal with that issue in itself, but they were, papers from some pretty high offices and potential legal documents that someone was just trying to find a place to store them, and they found a place, but then it was forgotten about with turnover of staff and things like that. And now we found them again, but they had severe water damage, and we're trying to work through that, because when they have water damage and potential mold and things like that, that brings a whole new issue into how we can best treat that and still make them accessible. But that's just one example of some of the challenges that archives face that are real. we have to address what we can, and try to process what we can and make them accessible. But patience is always required from anyone doing research, and just try to understand that no system is perfect. Likewise, when you don't have the staff, the last permanent archivist left about 6 or 7 years before I started, and with the exception of Dr. Tariq filling in for that 1 year, there really wasn't anyone permanently there to make sure that all the records were kept and make sure that things were being processed and documented like they should be. So, real talk and managing your expectations before you contact archives or try to do research. Just make sure that the reality is archival collections are always going to have gaps, no matter where you go. Whether it's due to staffing, like I said, or other resources, money, things like that, or if there was just no staff training for what they were supposed to keep or what was supposed to legally go to the archives. Communication is always a difficult thing sometimes, and if you do have a gap in staff, then again, you're not going to have those documents necessarily. One of the common questions we get involve people wanting information about alumni and other students or professors, for instance. I'm going to be honest. Unless they're in the yearbook, unless they've done something notable, an award or something like that, we may or may not have any information, whether, biographical information or a really substantial record of what they accomplished here. It is unfortunate, but it's just kind of the nature of, there are so many graduates who come through here, and again, unless there's a notable something they've accomplished, we're not necessarily going to have a record for them. But we always do try to refer you to other sources, whether it's the Outer Banks History Center, whether it's the State Archives, whether it's one of the public libraries in Virginia. The Historical Society that used to be here for Pasquotank County years ago, which Dr. Bowman could probably answer a little better than I could as far as when that stopped. But when they disbanded, all of their information went to different places. Some of it went to the State Archives, some went to the Outer Banks History Center in Manio, which is part of the State Archives as well, and then some went to some of the public libraries in Virginia nearby. Potentially, some even went to the public library here, but again, there wasn't one place where all of those documents could go for that local history. And when it comes to collections and training, there's some terms to be familiar with. One of them is archival silences. Some archival silences are deliberate, some are not. In the case of not having an archivist here, that would definitely be an unintentional silence. We weren't trying to hide history, weren't trying to brush anything under the rug, as they say. It was just unfortunate there was no one here to collect and corral all of that information and make sure it's preserved. And then others, again, can be deliberate if, for whatever reason, whether it's politics, whether it's someone who has more of a monetary gain to be had. But sometimes that can be difficult, and as archivists, we are trying to rectify that in many collections and do reparative description and make sure that the truth is told, because that's what we're about. for better or for worse, we are trying to shed light on what actually happened. They always say the victors write the story and the history, but we're trying to uncover the other side of the story too. Another phrase or term that you may not know about is an archival debt. And basically that means what the previous person in charge of the collection has left for that next keeper of the past and keeper of the history. Unfortunately, in the case of the ECSU archives, again, to be truthful, a lot of that was not processed completely, and we don't have a great inventory, don't have a searchable database. Well, that was when I first started anyway, and that is one thing I've definitely been trying to rectify from the beginning, because it is, how do you know, or how can you answer questions when you don't know what you have? And so we're trying, the name of the game is, the primary goal is always trying to provide access and make sure that people have the access and know what you have. While we may not digitize everything, we at least want to be able to be clear about what we do have, what we don't have. Another term is finding aids, which is another hope I have to get out online sooner rather than later for our collections, which basically will be a box and folder list that tells you, again, what we have. It's just not necessarily a digital scan of that document. But we want to be able to be transparent and definitely be inviting when it comes to, people asking questions and wanting to know what we have. And again, a collection is only as good and complete as the material that's kept or that's given to us. So we're trying to go back and not exactly recreate history, but try to at least get some idea of what happened. The original archivist that started the whole collection in the first place was Leonard Ballou, who was also a music professor, head of the music department. And it started in 1971, which is pretty late considering that the university started in 1891. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a lot of the early documents. The state archives do have some of the founding documents, but there's a bit of a gap in the late 1800s and early 1900s, except for catalogs and yearbooks. But we're always trying to find information, and would love to hear from people who may find things in their personal collections, who definitely, whether they inherited them from former employees or because, they would just take things home if they thought they were neat sometimes, which not going to say that's entirely uncommon, but we definitely would like the history to be kept here if possible. So if anybody knows about history like that, that's maybe in someone's personal collection at home that's been passed down, we would love to talk to you. We would love to schedule an appointment and see what you have. Again, we're not trying to take things away necessarily from you, but at the same time, we want to preserve the history of Elizabeth City State University and this local area. So, and whenever you do make donations, we always attach your name to it so that your family or whoever may have it will be attached to that and have a part in our history that you were able to make this donation and make this information available to everyone. So to contact us at the archives here at ECSU, you can contact us by email at archives, archives, at ecsu.edu, or by phone, area code 252-335-3431. Typically, we try to make appointments, and I'm here Monday through Friday. We can make other arrangements sometimes, though, if you need a weekend or evening. Again, we try to be as flexible as possible, and we always are looking forward to finding new connections, new new history, and if we can uncover any new information, that's definitely ideal. For any general questions about archives, any information on where you might find some information, or specifically for this area, please feel free to contact us anytime. And until next time.